your mother tasked you with calling in a pizza order, and you gave the phone over to your brother because you were not confident to call in the pizza order. Wow, apparently you've come a long way.
I did not want to talk to a stranger on the other end of the phone, and a simple task like calling in a pizza order was too much for me. Confidence is, in fact, a skill set that you can grow over time by practicing behaviors to change your attitude.
Wow. Emily Jaenson, welcome to the Bookaholic podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I am excited to bring you to my audience. Today, we're going to talk about confidence, which is just something that a lot of people battle with. I think I was naturally born with a lot of confidence, but a lot of people were not or didn't have the steps to take to becoming more confident. Now, it's very surprising. I was reading a little article on you where I forgot how old you were, but your mother tasked you with calling in a pizza order, and you gave the phone over to your brother because you were not confident to call in the pizza order. Wow, apparently you've come a long way. So, can you tell us a little bit about that aspect part in your childhood?
Yeah, sure. So I was once too shy to order a pizza. I did not want to talk to a stranger on the other end of the phone, and a simple task like calling in a pizza order was too much for me. I grew up in a small town, and I had areas of my life where I did well. I did well in school. I excelled in sports, but it was inside these microclimates. Anything that made me go outside my comfort zone, and I froze. And when I went away to college, I realized that the person that I wanted to become did not match the person who I was. And I discovered that despite popular belief, confidence is, in fact, a skill set that you can grow over time by practicing behaviors to change your attitude.
Wow. Okay. Yes. I've seen a lot, when you look at children, and children come in various forms and all types of things. And there's some children who are very shy. And I've been one of those terrible adults, I see little kids hiding behind their parents' knees and all of this kind of stuff. What do you think that comes from, this shyness, this not confidence, and you're just starting out in the world? What do you think this comes from?
Yeah, I mean, we're all our own unique individual people that are born with a certain set of personality traits. And I think it's up to us as individuals to really decide who it is that we want to become. And your future self will thank you for the work that you put in today. So just because you feel like you may have been born a shy person doesn't mean that you can't become the confident leader that you aspire to be, if that is part of your goals. And the way that you get there is by behaving like that person, which is pretty tricky because you're shy in the first place. You don't really have that gumption to get out there and do things that make you feel uncomfortable. So what I've done is I teach behaviors that you can start today that can lead you to become a more confident person over time. It's up to the individual to make that decision to go after their goals and to go after the life that they want to have. But these little tips and tricks can help you to get there, because the thing is, when we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations and we survive, our body says, our brain says, "Oh, okay, like we did that. We can do that." And your comfort zone expands a little bit further. And then in this case, can grow your confidence for more situations in the future.
Wow. Okay. So before we get to the tips and tricks, which I'm glad that there are some, and I'm sure somebody listening to this podcast is like chomping at the bit. Oh gosh, what are those tips and tricks? Before we get to that, what was your pivotal moment? What was your aha moment in life where you said, I'm not the person that I want to be? What turned you around, so to speak?
Yeah, I think our life is filled with these pivotal moments, with these hurdles that we have to overcome and these decisions that we have to make, just choosing the next right thing for us and for our future. But I think the most pivotal was in college. I went to a huge university. I'm a girl from a
Mhm.
town of 3,000 people, and I had
Okay.
finished at the top of my class. I was really good at sports, but I was a shark in a pond, right? Like the pool
Yeah.
was so much smaller. I went away
Right.
to a big university and I was essentially a minnow in an ocean. And
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to leave. I spent the first month of school crying in my dorm room, too shy
Oh.
to go out. I could hardly make it to class. It was really, really challenging for me. And one day when I was walking to class across the quad, I kind of like looked around at all the other students, and there they were, heads held high, carrying their books, looking like they knew what they were doing. And at that point, I thought to myself, like, why not you? Why can't you do that? You are capable of so much more. You just have to expand a little bit beyond where you feel comfortable and really lean into this experience that you have chosen to have. You got into the school, you chose to go here,
Mm-hmm.
you moved all your stuff into that dorm room. Like, let's go. And it was at that moment that I started to behave like what I saw. I saw these other college students, heads held high, pursuing a degree that would lead to them living out their dream and their career. And I wanted that too. So I
Mm-hmm.
started to act like her,
Right.
like that future Emily that carried that diploma, that went
Right.
to her job in Chicago. Like I started to think about my future self and behave in that
Mm-hmm.
way. And it took a
Mm-hmm.
certain amount of gumption, to get
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, love it or hate this phrase, would you equate this to fake it until you make it?
Not exactly. I get that question a lot. And it's not necessarily about faking it because I believe that that person is inside of us. In my case, she was just trapped and a little bit afraid and
Mm-hmm.
lacked the confidence to do the things that she wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I knew how to go to school. I knew how to succeed in school. I knew how to make
Right.
friends. I had done all of those things before. It was just behaving like her in this new environment. And it took a little bit of acting like that future self in order to get me there. And that's really where I use some of these tips and tricks. Like I was an athlete my whole life. I
Mm-hmm.
used to performing on the court or on the field by a clock. You use that clock to go, to start, to do things that challenge you. So
Mm-hmm.
there were tactics like 3, 2, 1, go. That countdown,
Right.
right? Three, two,
Yeah.
one, go. Get into that classroom and take that test. Three,
Right.
two, one, go. Say hello to the person sitting next to you. Use that countdown as the momentum and then do the action. That little by little, you see yourself succeeding and your
Mm-hmm.
confidence grows.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So a 3, 2, 1 approach is that's one of your tips and tricks.
It is. It is. And I believe a countdown is more effective than a count up. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you say 1, 2, 3, you can count to infinity. If you
That's
count,
true.
if you count down, you get to zero and it's time to take action. And if you
Right.
take that first step, if you say that first word, the counting
Mm-hmm.
will get you started and the momentum will keep you going.
Yes, yes, I like that a lot. There's a commercial out right now. I don't know what the product is. It might be toothpaste. I'm not sure. But there's two middle school girls in line to take class pictures. And one young lady has her mouth all closed, just kind of clamped down. And then a girl ahead of her looks back at her and she smiles and she has on braces. And the girl whose mouth is clamped down, she smiles. She has on braces. And that just little movement of the girl turning to somebody and smiling to her,
Mhm.
kind of like maybe a 3, 2, 1, I'm going to smile at the next person or whatever have you. The other person brightened up and then she had the confidence to go take her school pictures. So that's just kind of like the same type of framework, and it's awesome. It works in fact and it works in fiction, apparently.
It does. And I would add to that, that's a really good example of cheering other people on. Not just women, all of us, we
Right.
get trapped in this comparison cycle where
Yes.
we log into LinkedIn and we see the confetti going off for another person's promotion or new job. And rather than feeling excited and happy for our colleague or our connection that they are living into their dream, we think, why them and why not me? I'm stuck
Right.
here and they're accelerating, when really, like, did you even apply for that job? Were you even in that race? But if you can start cheering other people on rather than competing, oftentimes in a competition that you weren't even a part of,
Mm-hmm.
that will
Mm-hmm.
also boost your confidence. The example of
Right.
the girls with the braces. If the girl sitting on the chair with her mouth closed saw the other girl smile and thought immediately, "Oh, she looks so much better with braces than me. She keeps
Yes.
her mouth closed." But instead she thought, "Oh, cool, she's just like me.
Yeah.
She's happy.
Yes.
She can show off her teeth. We can both be beautiful with these
Yes.
braces."
Right.
Her
Right.
face lit up.
Yes.
So that mindset is absolutely critical to
Mm-hmm.
increasing your confidence, cheering others on rather
Yes.
than competing.
Right. That is perfect. Definitely not competing. I've witnessed that myself when I was a lot younger, and people would be, somebody in law might have all these accolades at the time, and somebody in a total different career path. And then the person would be, oh, why not me? Well, that first of all, law is not your area. So,
Yeah.
there's no need in comparing yourself to somebody. It's just not even your lane at all. So, yes, definitely that comparison syndrome is terrible, but I'm glad you've got some tips and tricks for that as well. Let's talk a little bit more about you, because you've gone from that shy girl to being a TED Talk lecturer. Your TED Talk was called 6 Tips for Building Your Confidence. It's amassed an impressive 3 million views within a year, and it's ranked number 12 among the 16,000 TEDx Talks uploaded to YouTube in 2022. That's quite impressive. You're also the first female general manager of a AAA baseball team in nearly 2 decades. Okay, so you mentioned earlier throughout the podcast that you were involved in sports, and you've been involved in sports since a child. What were your sports?
So I played soccer, volleyball, gymnastics, basketball, track, cheerleading. I mean, I did it all at different points in my career, and sports were really the thing that got me out and got me going, got me outside of my
Yeah,
house in my rural community and
yeah.
connected me on a larger platform to more people. And my first foray in sports, I was about 5 years old when I learned how to keep score at a baseball game, at
Hmm.
my older brother's game. So it started early for me, and it's been something that I've loved for my whole life.
Well, how did you get on the trajectory to be the first female general manager of a what, triple A baseball team in nearly 2 decades? How did you get there? How did you get in that lane?
Yeah, so I have a saying, be so good, they won't forget you. And what that
Mhm.
means is every time you get an opportunity, give it your all, do
Mhm.
your best. And that is, in the short form, the way that I got that opportunity. I started my career working for the Chicago Bulls in the NBA,
Mhm.
selling season and group tickets. And with any business, including sports, the foundation of that business is driving revenue. You have to
Mhm.
make money for the company in order for it to exist. Even
Right.
the flash of a sports organization, you might just see the players and their big paychecks and not really understand like how it all gets put together. But it starts with sales, and you have to sell tickets to the game, among other things, in order to make everything pencil. So I
Mhm.
was fortunate to get that opportunity early in my career through networking, and worked for the Bulls during a 10-month internship. and really had to go outside my comfort zone. You wouldn't believe that my job was to make 80 phone calls a day to strangers and sell them season and group tickets, which was so far outside my comfort zone.
Yes.
But as
Considering
we
the pizza episode.
yeah, was not prepared to take that job. It was like getting your dream job and then realizing like your actual duties as assigned were your living nightmare. That's truly what happened to me. But as with all things, when we are forced to operate outside of our comfort zone and we survive, our confidence grows. And that really set the trajectory for the rest of my career. Leaving the Bulls, I went and worked for a major nonprofit, selling programs and running major events, and then found myself with an opportunity to work in baseball, selling sponsorships for a AAA baseball team, which is the highest level of affiliated baseball. You've got your major league club and then AAA, AA, high A, and low A. So the major league club essentially operates this whole roster of 200 players who are moving up and down through their system to put out the best team for Major League Baseball. So at the AAA level, you're essentially their bench depth. Our team had 200 transactions a year. So these guys are playing on our AAA field, and then they may get their call up the next day and they're playing in a big league stadium. So that's how baseball works. But my first role there, I really took a step back to take a step forward. I took a job that was about a two to 3 year requirement in previous experience, and I had about eight years. But it was the only opportunity that was open, and I had to bet on myself. So I accepted the job, which was a lower pay and lower title, because I knew that I could prove myself and move forward in the organization. 2.5 years later, I went from account executive to vice president at the company and left on that high note. My husband and I relocated our family for a career opportunity for him. Leaving and moving to another city, I got into sports right away and worked for 2 years in that city, all the while keeping in touch with that team that I had previously worked for. So when they were looking for a new GM, they did a national search and ultimately called me, said, hey, we did this search, and what we do know is that we know who needs this job. I just need to convince you to move back. So it was a phenomenal opportunity in my career, and really one that came about through being so good they won't forget you, staying humble, taking a job that a lot of people might have passed up because it was below their level of expertise. But sometimes you have to do that in your career in order to prove yourself and get on that rocket ship to the next level. You're not there forever.
That's exactly right. That's a wonderful story. It's totally wonderful. There was so many things I saw in that. One, don't burn your bridges.
Yeah.
That's one in there also. And, I was a salesperson for many years earlier in my career when I worked with corporate. I always did the things that other salespeople would not do. And that goes in alignment with what you were just saying. You took a job that was below maybe your skill set and all of these different things and your experience and all this, but you did it, and you did it so well they didn't forget you. That is a wonderful, wonderful illustration on what you should do to form out your way of success. Now, the TED Talk, that's another incredible thing that you've done. And how did you get, again, on the trajectory of being a TED Talk speaker? Do you apply? How does that all work?
Yeah, so you do apply. There's an application process. And I had a couple of friends text me the application and say, hey, you should really be a part of this event. Just so happens that it was TEDx Reno, right in my own hometown, or my new hometown. Right. And the cool thing about the event here is the production is first class. And if you're ever considering doing TEDx, you definitely want to take a look at what the previous iteration videos look like. How well they produced, because in order for it to succeed on YouTube, you have to deliver the best talk of your life, but it also has a better chance of performing if it looks great. And TEDx Reno is a phenomenal event. So I applied, and along with hundreds of other people, and
Yes.
got a call from the organizer, and he said, "Hey, Emily, we got your application. We do want you to be a part of this show, but I want to tell you, you made it into the top 80, you made it into the top 60, you made it to the top 40, and you've got to make it to the top 20 in order to get a spot on the show." And I said, "Okay, great. Like, what do I have to do?" And he goes, "Well, here's the thing. Your topic is confidence. And I don't know if you knew this, but there's a whole channel on TEDx dedicated to talks on confidence."
Oh.
I said, I didn't know that. "What's your point here? What do we need to do?" And he's like, "Well, I need to know why you, and why is your talk going to be different and impactful? We need to dig in a little bit." And I said, his name's Brett. I said, "Brett, have you ever visited the creamer aisle in the grocery store?" And he's like, "Yes. Where are you going with this?" I said, "Well, there's full fat, there's almond milk, there's oat milk, there's sugar-free. Don't get me started on flavors. There's a variety of flavors, even depending on the season. Yeah. And you know what? There's a customer for every single one of those flavors of creamer, because it's the right flavor at the right time." And I said, "I believe that I will be the right person with the right message and the right voice at the right time, that I can make an impact." And he said, "Okay, that sounds pretty good. You're acing this impromptu interview." And then we went into the details of kind of how I would pull the talk together and what would make it different. And ultimately, he gave me a spot in the show. And you go through kind of a gauntlet with TEDx here, which is why the show is so great, where the speakers essentially go through a boot camp. You're working with the event organizers. You deliver your talk to them 3 separate times, where they give you feedback and make sure that you're ready for the main stage. Your talk has to be memorized. It has to be impactful. You have to be on your A game. And I was. At the day of the event, I was second to last in the lineup. And I decided that I'm going to speak on confidence. So I better go out there and nail it. Like, no knees shaking, let's have fun. And I decided I was going to have a great time. I had practiced and worked for 6 months to do this. I was going to go out there and just have a blast. And I did. I mean, I was bouncing around that stage. I was so excited to deliver my message. And I think that really resonated with the audience, because TEDx chose my talk to be featured. And then a year later, over 3 million views. And I'm hearing from people around the world on how that talk is making an impact in their lives, which is so, so special. And ultimately, that led to me writing a book, Let's Go, A Guide to Increasing Your Confidence, where I could take those 6 tips that is really only a small seed in this journey, and really grow and extrapolate that into a book that has an impact on every reader, if you choose to dive in and apply some of the principles that are discussed in the book to your life. I truly believe that you can live that big life you've been dreaming of.
Yes, wow. This is just incredible. And definitely, we're going to have links to your book in the podcast show notes and in the YouTube video description box. But again, it's called Let's Go, A Guide to Increasing Your Confidence. And it debuts in the spring. So do you have a more definite date for the book release?
I will shortly. So thinking end of March, beginning of April. The publisher hasn't given me a definitive date that we will release yet. There are lots of tasks to put in order before that book is ready to hit the shelves. But very soon this spring, it'll be available on Amazon and in a lot of different marketplaces. And then the neat thing is, the next step is working on an audiobook. So you'll get to hear this amazing Chicago accent reading Let's Go.
Well, I'm sure it will be even more impactful to hear your voice when you're talking about confidence. I can see how that could be even more impactful to read, and then to listen to both versions would be definitely impactful. So let's go back to one more tip and trick that you might have. We've discussed a few along the way. Give us one more.
Yeah, one more tip. So we've talked about 3, 2, 1, go. We've talked about cheering other people on. The last one I'll leave you with, this one I get so many questions about when I do keynote speeches to companies. And I'm not surprised that I get a lot of questions about that because most people don't do it. And it's celebrate constantly. Celebrate constantly. Oftentimes when we achieve our goals, we're very quick to move on. We're even hard on ourselves sometimes. If it's too easy to get to the goal, we think, oh, should have set it higher. Should have done more. What would have happened if I would have gone a little bit harder? When the fact is, you made it there. And in order to achieve any goal, you really have to put in an effort and work outside your comfort zone. And if you do those things, achieve that goal, and you don't high five your brain, if you don't say, good job, we made it, your brain is going to forget that you made it to your goal. It's not going to recognize that as a positive thing in your life. And you are going to have a harder time achieving that next milestone.
Right.
So you see this happen a lot in sales teams where a sales team achieves their goal maybe early in Q3. And the boss says, oh, we should have set the goal higher.
Yeah.
Rather than celebrating the success of that team, because what if you didn't put in that effort? Like you would have never got to that milestone in the first place. Right. And that sets up this culture where it's harder to achieve, harder to push further, because you're not recognizing the success of those efforts. So that applies to a corporate landscape. It applies to ourselves as an individual. If you decide to really stretch your boundaries and find out what you're capable of and run a marathon, and during every training session, all your brain thinks about is, this is so hard. This is so uncomfortable. I'd rather be doing this other thing. And you cross that finish line and you think, oh, thank God it's over. You know, I didn't even run that fast. Like, what was the point of this? How did that opportunity serve you? You know, you put in all this time and effort just to be upset in the end. If we can celebrate, we can grow our confidence. We can reflect on our achievements with this wonderful positivity that's going to bolster our propensity to succeed in the future. So never forget to celebrate.
Oh, wow. What a wonderful note to end the talk on today. Never forget to celebrate. Wow. That's very impactful. I can't imagine what your book must be like. I can't wait for it to hit the shelves. And again, the name of your book is called Let's Go, A Guide to Increasing Your Confidence, available this spring. Check out all the places where you buy your books online, or your independent bookstore, or your local library. So we'll have information about following Emily in the podcast show notes and in the YouTube description box. And also you have a podcast as well. What's the name of your podcast?
I do. It's called Leadership is Female, and I interview female executives. It started as female executives in sport and has since grown and expanded and diversified to female executives working in all sorts of industries who have the goal to lead others forward rather than pulling up the ladder behind them, right? And making it very lonely at the top, the way that we used to do things. They're extending a hand back to lead you forward, sharing the tips, the tricks, sharing the lessons they've learned from overcoming hurdles in their career. And that's called Leadership is Female. And it's been such an honor to lead that show for about 3.5 years now.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, Emily Jaenson, thank you so much for joining the Bookaholic podcast today. This has been wonderful, and I know my audience will get a lot out of this. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.